as our 2x2 formation. Road change now, we go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action is go.
This is very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line. Yes,
Oh, he did.
through he goes.
Good evening everybody and welcome back to another Apex Online Racing stream here for the finale of Tier 2 in the AOR ACC Sprint Series, and after 7 rounds we have got a fantastic championship battle going all the way down to the wire. And joining me in the commentary box, hopefully for the full duration of this stream to end this season on a high, my good friend Tim. How are you doing, buddy?
Hello, mate. Yeah, doing hopefully much better than last week. Got everything tethered off my phone today, so it might not sound quite as crisp, but I should be able to stay the entirety of the race this time, as I've completely given up on my household Wi-Fi. I'm done with it. So now tethered off my phone, and amazingly, ping's not too bad, to be fair. Like you said, right down to the wire for the championship. I say always a little bit of drop off towards the end of the season, but there's a decent grid here this evening, 18 guys, and the most important thing is that the top battlers appear to all be here. Obviously the battle for first place in the championship, Tommy Razir and Grantis Caracas, only 7 points splitting those guys, so I believe you've been doing a fair bit of math and working out where people can finish and still just about hold on to or possibly lose the championship. And then down the battle for third place between Oliyars, Wright and Yonkers, say 419, 406 and 403 are respectively on the points tables. So again, not a lot between those guys. Very, very possible that we could see some changing around there for third place.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, speaking of that third place, the man that's been on just the finest of form recently is Marco Yonkers. He's taken back-to-back victories. He's the only driver this season to have taken back-to-back victories. And, you know, he had an absolutely strategic masterclass at Spa. He then went on to last race, and he never really kind of outshone in raw pace a lot of the time, but his consistency and his patience during the entire race just ended up coming his way in the end. And he really has made a fantastic late charge in his end stage of the season. So you'd have to think that, considering how close the points margin is at the moment, that if he's able to put together a good race, as we just see him go provisional P2 in the practice session, of course, but already showing that he seems to have some pretty handy pace behind the wheel of that McLaren, that he could seriously be looking to jump up a couple of spots in the final stages and maybe snatch away that P3 from Oliyars and Connor Wright. And yeah, absolutely, talking about you know, sort of the main highlight of this finale, the championship battle. There's been such a back and forth between Tommy and Grantis during the entire season, and Tommy has generally been the more consistent of the two drivers. He had one very poor showing at round 2 at the Nürburgring, finished 28th there, and that really hurt his championship hopes. But ever since then, he hasn't finished anywhere lower than 4th, whereas Korekes, again, has generally been consistent, but he's had 2 slightly poor results at Donington and the Hungaroring, and they've ended up putting him in a little bit of strife. But it has been so nip and tuck between these two all season, and fundamentally, more or less, if these guys finish within the top 5 positions, I believe that whichever one of them finishes ahead of the other will end up being the champion. If they finish outside of the top 5, then it starts to get a little bit trickier in terms of how much of an advantage Korekes can maybe gain in points, because the difference between the scores at those lower positions does start to get a little bit tighter. So really, we're very much used to these guys being within that top 5. You know, neither of them have finished off the podium in the last couple of races, so we're expecting them to be there or thereabouts. So fundamentally, we have got an out-and-out duel going down to the very last laps if we're lucky.
Really hope so. Hopefully we won't get too many disconnects this evening. But say, here we go, qualifying beginning, 18 cars. All, look at that, the leading guys immediately out. They are pouring out of the pits. I'm trying to think, who is our leading driver? Well, actually, car number 12, which is Connor Wright. At the moment, but if we all sit tight, it's going to get hot. I'm just having a quick look to see if I can pull up the points system, as I always lose where it is, as my brain is a complete sieve of information.
I think, if I remember rightly, if it's under information and then race classification on the AOR website, and whilst you're tracking that down, speaking of the AOR website, there will of course be a Season 10 in due course after Season 9 wraps up today, and ApexOnline.racing is the place to go when that season comes about if you would be interested in taking part and getting yourself registered to get involved in some of this action. It's great to see sort of how much this community has grown. There's tiers upon tiers, so there's always going to be a competitive racing environment, no matter what your sort of pace and consistency is and how new or familiar you are with the game. So definitely the place to go if you're interested in getting involved in some league racing.
Yeah, I say, and it's not just Tier 1, Tier 2 either. There's quite a few tiers. I think there's 10 tiers total, and obviously what you do is an evaluation race or 2, just to sort of get an idea of what you like on track, not just looking at your raw pace, but also just having a bit of a look at just how good of a racer you are, what your racecraft's like, how you handle the car, how consistent, and then the idea is to put you in the correct tier, so you should have some nice clean and close racing. So I just noticed the actual track on qualifying, it's still only fast at the moment, so might see some even quicker times during the actual race, but obviously quali on a fast track, so not possibly what these guys have been practicing on either. Quite often if you're going to do practicing, you'll end up doing on optimum, as that's what the circuit will be like when you're racing. So these guys will be on pretty lightweight setups, possibly more aggressive setup for the tyres to try and get a much quicker time. I would imagine they're probably only running enough fuel for maybe 3 flying laps, I'd presume. Some of these big serious guys running as little fuel as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. You tend to have very, very tight margins. You don't want any extra fuel because that's added weight to the car, takes a bit more out of the tyres. Obviously, they're not too worried about tyre wear in the sort of qualifying stage, but it is amazing how quickly that freshness and grip starts to fall off with these tyres. Maybe not quite as aggressive as the sort of cliffs that we see in Formula 1, but it is still definitely noticeable. So yeah, around somewhere like Silverstone, where we've got these really high-speed corners, we're on board with Connor Wright at the moment, seeing how he fares around the circuit, and these long, sustained cornering forces puts a lot of strain on the tyres, and tyre wear then does start to end up suffering quite a bit as a result. So that would be also an interesting aspect to see how these guys deal with that during the course of the race.
So Connor Wright just coming towards the end of his first flying lap. Car number 48 behind him as well. Dennis Latz has been pretty close to the back of him. So I think you might almost see Latz putting in a quicker time than Connor Wright. I am going to dip out for 1 second. As I said, I'm tethering off my phone and I desperately need a phone charger. So I'll be back in 2 seconds while I just quickly lean over and grab it. But already into the 157s, Dennis Latz. That is ridiculous speed. Already in the 157s.
Yeah, that is fantastic pace there, and an interesting feature potentially between these guys. We've got the Van Wall SimSport guys who have they've got quite the roster here in Tier 2, so they've already taken a very commanding championship win for the team's championship, but Connor Wright's got something to play for, trying to, one of those drivers that's looking to be involved in snatching away that P3 from Oliars potentially. So Dennis Latz finishing ahead of him, all within the same team, of course. It'd be interesting to see maybe how that fares during the race, whether or not there'll be any sort of team orders between these guys. I think they quite often hang around in the same chat between one another, but that'll be something to monitor, as well as Grantas Caracas, currently sitting P2 in the championship, provisional P3, sitting only 0.05 of a second ahead of his championship rival Tommy Rozier, who is lining up on the second row of the grid. And whilst generically in previous seasons of AOR with the earlier updates and BOPs, the McLaren has tended to be just the outright dominant force around at Silverstone. It's just so good. It's got fantastic straight line speed, brilliant handling in high speed corners, and just the characteristics of the nature of Silverstone really works with this car. But since 1.8 and the M4 has come in, the M4 really does give the McLaren a run for its money around it, and we saw that put to work in Tier 1 yesterday, where BS Plus Competition took 1, 2, 3 with those guys. Neil's a last-ditch effort to try to snatch away the championship from George Boothby. It got pretty close in the end, but he wasn't quite able to do it. But BMW's again looking very fast. Rozier then provisionally goes ahead of Caracas, and so does Marco Yonkers. So Yonkers, the guy on this grid that's been in extremely fine form over the last couple of races, he could have a part to play in this, because he's not going to be conceding anything in any way. He has no commitments in terms of teammates or anything like that, and he's gunning to try to get himself up to P3. So he's definitely another one to watch in this grid.
Yonkers has been slowly climbing his way up through the championship, hasn't he? We're having a quick look at his overall finishes. Didn't attend our first race. Then he had a 12th, a 5th, a 10th, a 7th. But then, as you said earlier on, he's come pole on the last 2 races. So he's obviously got the pace. Whether or not he just feels a bit more comfortable in the car later in the season. But the McLaren does really well round here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see McLaren. The one thing I have noticed a fair few times while watching some different of these long straights is insanely good. I've yet to see anyone be able to outbrake a BMW at the end of any of the straights. It is amazing on the brakes, that thing. I mean, I've seen people, they go up the inside, they think, yeah, I've got it, they brake as late as they dare, and the BMW goes another car length, then hits the brakes and just seems to glide on round. So I don't expect to see too many moves under braking, but I mean, these guys are the guys that are going to prove me wrong, really. The Tier 2 guys, they've done amazingly this season. There's been some really close racing, some incredibly clean racing as well, especially early in the season. Has to be said that they far outperformed their Tier 1 brothers as when it comes to clean and fair racing. There was quite a bit of squabbling in the old Tier 1, but Tier 2, these guys have really held their own and really done us proud this season.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, last week at Zolder was a clear demonstration that once again, we didn't have a single drive-through penalty for anybody in Tier 2. And around Zolder, it's such a difficult track to try to, for 90 minutes worth of racing, to not get any drive-through. So these guys were consistent. We had minimal contact during the race after some very busy moments, and just noticed something very, very interesting. Marlon in that Ferrari has put himself in P3. So we've got, not only have we got a Vanwall SimSport 1, 2, 3, two BMWs leading the way, such tight margins with these guys, but like I say, the more cars that potentially end up in front of Tommy and Karekas, and Karekas still sitting behind Marco Jonkers at the moment on the grid, the more that starts to fall into the favour of Tommy. Because if these guys just simply aren't able to get to the properly pointy end of the grid, that makes it all the more difficult for Karekas to potentially look to try to overtake Razier in the championship. So these Vanwall SimSport guys could still have something to sort of play into with this race. And we were sort of talking about the idea of penalties and things from Zolder as well. Silverstone, another tricky circuit. You've got such high commitment around some of these corners, and the curbs, apart from these sort of orange sausage curbs that we see in a couple of places, generally the curbs are very, very flat and they're quite forgiving. So they encourage you to attack them. That's what makes Silverstone such a driver's track, is that you're so close to the limit and you're able to extract absolutely everything around the lap. But it can be dangerous because there's such a fine line between getting a fantastic corner optimally right, and just going slightly beyond that limit and getting yourself a track warning. And you accumulate enough of those and you will get struck down with a drive-through penalty, and that effectively ends up meaning game over when we've only got something like a 60-minute race. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys try to stay on top of that and manage their race performance, as well as seeing what their net race pace is. But yeah, Vanwall SimSport, maybe not exactly deliberately, these guys trying to just be as competitive as they possibly can, but indirectly maybe having a bit of an influence on the way this championship may pan out.
Yeah, because I think I'm doing the math, and I'll admit my math may not be the best, but I think like 4th and 5th is basically if Karekas and Razier are sort of next to each other on circuits and behind each other, they have, I think it has to be like 4th and 5th will influence whatever position they're in. So if they're lower down, Karekas even if he then beats Razier, I think if he comes 5th or if he comes 6th, I can't remember looking at the math. Basically, yeah, outside the top 5, Karekas then needs to put a cushion of a car between them. Oh, and there you go, Karekas on pole. Look at that.
That's certainly 3,000ths of a second to Connor Wright. These are the sort of fine margins that we're expecting from these guys.
Exactly. And Latz instantly comes along and goes, no.
And wipes the floor.
Thank you, mine. But the important thing there is, on the opening lap, when it's a bit busier, and the most likely, if there's incidents, it tends to be lap 1, Karekas is now in front of Razier, and there is 2 cars between them. So there's a little bit of a defence. So if Karekas and Latz can maybe not squabble too much, there's a possibility that they can start to get away a little bit. And while Wright and Marlon are having a bit of a squabble, that could hold up Razier. So this might work in his favour. If Karekas can hold on to 2nd place and Razier doesn't get himself up to 3rd place or higher, that's a massive advantage when it comes to championship points.
I don't know, I know what you're saying, but I think Razier might have something to say about it. And he invalidated the last lap. It would have been a 57.3, which would have seen him go into 2nd place ahead of Karekas, but he invalidated it. So Razier clearly has pace and he's pushing, but maybe just buckling a little bit under the pressure. These are possibly championship-changing laps. We may still have 60 minutes of racing to go, but as you rightly say, there is sometimes so much dependency on where you start the race, and even if it's just things that are out of your control, it can have so much influence on the way that the rest of that race ends up playing out. So Razier's going to be going for it once more. I think he's got a chance to do 2 more laps here. Steven goes a little bit wide on the exit of Stowe there. That's one of those key places that can be so easy to track extend. The front end just starts to wash away from you and you get a bit too greedy and early on the power, and the way that Stoke comes in and sort of pinches back towards you, and that really starts to scuff you a bit if you have got a little bit too greedy on the power. So he'll be saying what he can do here. I haven't got much of a reference of a delta, so it does look like he actually has maybe found a 10th. I think he found another 10th last lap in the final sector, so if this has been a clean lap, he may be looking to try to work his way back up towards that front row again, as Connor Wright has also improved. He's gone ahead of Karekas by 1/100th of a second, so these margins are very, very tight between sort of the likes of 2nd and 5th, but Dennis Latz, a 57.200. That is a brilliant time from him, and he's been unlucky this season. I think he's had multiple disconnects. Remember that he had one at the Hungaroring, so he's looking to try to improve. Tommy does do that .3 in the end. He was going between a .1 and .2 on his delta, but he has managed to bring that one to the line. Marco Jonkers, though, goes slightly ahead of him, and again we've got these other guys potentially playing a factor. Connor Wright is also on a bit of an improvement. I think he's about to cross the line. There's not too much time left on the clock as well, so I don't know how many more laps we're going to have. Connor Wright, that's going to be it from him, so he won't be improving. Karekas is on a lap. Yeah, this will be it.
Final spec.
And Tommy's found another 10th as well in Sector 1, so we'll see what Karekas does, but Tommy's improving.
Oh, this is so close. This is absolutely nail-biting stuff, and in an hour's time it's going to be just as nail-biting again. So here we come, coming up to the line. Are we going to see an improvement from Karekas? Cut the corner as much as he dare. No!
Oh, it wasn't improvement. He did the same time as Connor Wright. To the thousandths of a second, he did the same
absolutely
time.
The same, but not enough to get himself on the same row. He's going to be starting a row behind.
And Tommy's returned to pits as well. So
possibly, maybe now seeing that Karekas is definitely behind him, he's just thinking, okay, I've done as much as I need to. Let's just have a little breather, make sure he gets everything set up, because the last thing these guys want to do now is get a little bit excited and start the race on a qualify setup, as we've all done it. We've all started a race and gone, oh, I've only got 4 laps worth of fuel.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the killer. Is the killer here. It's not what you want to do, because trying to then come into the pit and do your setup, it's an immediate time killer, isn't it? Really, you're not going to be able to get away with that. That's your race over. Like we said, it's an hour race. There's no chance of survival there. So, as a quick one, going back to you saying obviously about the way the curb system works here at Silverstone. One thing you do have to be quite aware of, I think it's through like the village complex, so most of Sector 2 to be fair. As it's a very, very flat circuit, but they do have these large red sausage curbs on the inside of the corners. If you rotate and you end up stationary on top of those, it is incredibly common that cars get beached. So they just don't have any drive. They're sat there, the underside of the car is sat on that curb, and they cannot move. So unless someone gives them a nudge or they return to pits, they are completely stuck. So something to keep an eye on is cars suddenly just sat on corners for a really long period of time for no apparent reason. And it can simply be that they've had the most simple little over-rotation, nothing major that shouldn't put them out of the race, but they're just stuck on the giant red curbs, simply because it's so flat at Silverstone. There's just no gradient to help you get back off of these gigantic curbs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a painful way to sort of end up in a race-ending situation like that. I mean, what an incredibly disappointing way, and it's sometimes it can be slightly comical of how these cars end up in these positions, but from a driver's perspective, it is absolutely gut-wrenching, especially when some of these guys put in countless amounts of hours into practice. But hopefully we won't see any incidents like that. But the sausage curbs, they are dangerous for several reasons, and with these cars, they're all generally really quite stiff. They're all very low to the ground. McLaren and the Ferrari in particular are extremely sensitive if you whack those sausage curbs. Things like the Bentley, the Lexus, they don't react very well to them, but they'll cope with them for the most part. But some of these other cars really do not like it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They're going to have to be careful of that no matter what. But as we start the countdown then, before we begin the formation lap for the final race of the season, Dennis Latz gets pole position. I think his first pole position of the season as well, after such an up and down season of luck where he's had several disconnects when he's been running in strong positions. This would certainly, from his perspective, be a little bit of good karma coming his way finally to see if he can challenge for the win here. And followed up in second place, Marco Jonkers, the man that has been in extremely fine form over the last couple of races and generally hasn't been someone in qualifying that's been fantastically strong. I think this might have been his strongest qualifying performance in the last couple of races, but yet he still found ways to win those races at Spa and Zolder. So what I've learnt to realise is that you can never rule out this man. Doesn't matter if it's changeable weather or not, sometimes he just manages to find a way. So Marco in a very strong position. And then P3, our current championship leader, Tommy Rozier, sitting nicely 2 places ahead of his championship rival, Grantis Korekis. He's got Connor Wright in between those 2 guys. And Connor Wright challenging for P3, as we said, along with Jonkers in the championship, and then followed by Korekis, then Marlon Andrade, and then Christian Steinhauser starting in P7. That's a decent starting position from him. Someone we expected to sort of carry a bit more momentum over from the previous season. That we haven't really seen him up there, but BMW's strong around this circuit, and it looks like that has gone in the favour of Christian here. And then Marcin Oliar starting down in P8. Very up and down season for him as well in terms of qualifying performance. Has had some good recovery drives, which has allowed him to be in this sort of P3 challenging position. But when you compare the positions of Jonkers and Connor for where they're starting, probably sitting a bit lower than he would have liked. So Marcin might have some work to do there. And then Zorax, haven't seen him too often this season, but starting well for him. 2 in P9, so it was a good showing from him. And then in P10, fan favourite Vince van Meerveld for Pole Sim Sport in that number 29 McLaren to round out top 10. Do you want to take the rest of the grid, Tim?
Oh, I do apologise about that. I had to quickly clean up a drink that I just spilled.
Ah, that's rather unfortunate. I do apologise.
Sorry if I went silent about that one. I just suddenly was like, oh, good lord. It was a case of quickly mute the mic and run away and get some towels before it all went very, very wrong.
Do we have a resolved drink situation though now?
Yes, drink situation is resolved. It is now in an elevated position where no dogs can get anywhere near it or make me panic. They're going to knock it over and then not actually knock it over, and in the process I knock it over. You know, the stand kind of things that happen in life.
The wonderful double bluffs of pets. It's something that we all love and enjoy. It's
the same as when you drop your phone and then you think, oh, I'll quickly put my foot out and I'll catch it, and instead what you do is just absolutely like Maradona level boot it against the wall, and you're like, cool, it could have fell maybe a foot, and instead it's fallen a foot and been smashed into a wall as well.
Just despite your best efforts, it just manages to go even more wrong. I think everybody has at least had feelings like that on multiple days. But yeah, so no difference here in the commentary box. We'll finish rounding out the grid then before these guys finish the formation lap. We've got Alex in P11, and to clarify from last week, Alex is a different entry to Alex Torregrossa. Torregrossa has had a couple of no-shows in the last couple of races, but Alex stepping in, I believe he was one of the either late additions to the grid, maybe a reserve, but he took part of Zolder, had a fairly quiet race, I think, sort of around at the back of the field, but starting P11 here, so it's going to be good starting position from him, although imagine the guys around him might be a little bit wary of that high ping, but hopefully if it's fairly stable, a bit like we've seen with Marlon and Masum earlier on in the season, that fingers crossed that doesn't cause any troubles. Astruch in P12, followed by Ben Keys in P13. Yuko Terminen representing Team Lexus starting in P14. As we hear that lovely sound in V8, just blip its throttle for a moment there. Matt York starting P15, a bit of an up and down season for him. He's had some strong performances at times, but equally hasn't always been able to put it together. So we'll have to see how he gets on today. Followed by his Bentley compatriot Dylan Goslin. Had some strong pace at Zolder, where the Bentley was particularly strong, but just had inconsistencies in the race. Was a victim of the most dangerous, one of the most dangerous sequence of corners I think we've had on this calendar. That I think it was 7-8 chicane was just so tricky, and he fell victim to that multiple times. Jan climbs in the Porsche down in P17, our only Porsche on the grid for today. Porsche does struggle a little bit around here. There's just so many long straights, and the top speed on the Porsche is well known to be not fantastically strong, but we'll see what he's able to do. And then rounding out the field, Benjamin King to start in P18. So we're definitely going to have an interesting one. I think the BMWs and McLarens have been so close on pace, and I think we've got a fantastic finale that's about to begin.
Yeah, it's someone to keep an eye on. It's going to be Yonkers. He is championship-wise running for 3rd place overall, and he's in a really good position for this one. Say, Connor Wright is a row behind him, and is it Marlon as well? No, not Marlon. Ollie Yars is even further back in the grid, so he's got a nice little advantage. Dennis Latz is a bit of a wild card, really. As he's quite low down in the championship, but with the final run to the line, how are the guys going to get off the line? Is Razier going to be able to get away from Caracas, or is he going to be able to squeeze up behind him? So right behind him in the actual row. Lights go green. Oh, it's a bad start from Caracas. It's a bad start for him. Can Yonkers do it? Already gone a bit wide, but it looks like Yonkers is actually going to be out on pole when they come into Maggots and Beckett, and he's got Razier following in closely behind. Oh, don't squabble.
Oh, Yonkers off.
Oh, no. Yonkers off. He might get a track warning for that, but he doesn't want to lose too many positions. Razier looking to take advantage, trying to push through, but not able to. At this point, Caracas just needs to get a wriggle on and immediately push forward as quickly as he can. And at the moment, he is stuck behind some traffic.
Got Connor Wright trying to go around the outside of Razier. That's the last thing that Razier wants, and got Caracas now 3 wide as they head towards the club chicane. Who's going to come out on top of this? Connor Wright has got the position, but Caracas now trying to go around the outside of Tommy Razier, and he's done it. So, Razier's trying to come back around the outside of the club corner. Can he make that one work? The championship rivals going side by side as they head towards Abbey. Tommy Razier trying to hold it around the outside. Surely he hasn't got the grip for that. Connor Wright trying to put on Razier's lost it! Razier's lost it! He held onto it! He held onto that! We've got I think it's Ben Keys off in the background, but Razier! Razier! He's pushed a bit too hard with the tyres being cold and now swamped by the mid-pack. He's got to try to keep his head together here. He needs to make sure he doesn't make any more mistakes. He doesn't want to make contact with any of these guys. Got Meerveld trying to see if he can make a move. There's 3 wide again, but Razier might have just cost himself dearly in this championship. Alex sweeping around the outside of him. We said how strong the brakes were in that BMW, but Razier coming under pressure from Meerveld, but looks like those guys are settled for now. But Razier, it looked so good for him at the beginning. He was challenging for P2, and then all of a sudden, just trying to follow Caracas through that Abbey section, just pushed a bit too hard and ended up losing it. It was a fantastic save, and how he didn't end up losing it completely is we got a beautiful view of a cone being sent to Narnia across the camera there. But yeah, Razier managed to save that one on the absolute brink, but that's possibly going to be incredibly telling for this championship fight, because if they finish like the way that they are at the moment, that would give the championship to Caracas. But other than that, I think we at least had a fairly clean start in terms of the rest of the field. Although looking back at Rozier again, he's gone deep towards Stowe, and now he's come under pressure from Mirville. So Rozier having a disastrous first couple of laps. Mirville going to back out of it though. Rozier almost goes into the back of the BMW of Alex. So Rozier really does need to try dispatching of some of these cars if he can. But my goodness, in the background, got a lot of jostling of positions. We've got a Struch and Matt York going side by side. Dylan Goslin and Jan Climbs trying to go side by side through Abby. Goslin swings around the outside of Jan Climbs. Jan Climbs now under pressure from York. Can York do anything about it there? He thinks about a late dive. He's not going to be able to do anything about that. I think those guys are going to calm down for now. But my goodness, in terms of the championship, what an incredibly exciting first couple of laps.
Quick one, actually, York and Climbs are 10th and 11th respectively in the championship, so those two are going to be squabbling for positions to get themselves inside the top 10. And as you said with that first lap where Rozier tried to go round Caracas, to be fair, Caracas actually went deep himself. He was just in front, and so I wonder if literally Rozier was like, I'm going to wait till I see brake lights, give it a millisecond and then get on the brakes. But Caracas outbraked himself. He ended up on the grass as well. Very, very nearly rotated on the grass. But I think he just got off the throttle and just sort of coasted through and managed to hold on to his fourth place position. But that's how he actually ended up losing positions to, I think it was Connor Wright at that position moment. But Rozier, really, really bad luck. And he's got a very, very respectable racer behind him, fan favourite man, Van Meerveld.
We've got a car off. Ben Keys. Ben Keys has gone off through the Magnussen Beckett section, and he has retired. So that is our first retirement of the race. So obviously not the way that he wanted that to go, but Silverstone already claiming some victims already, and even some of the most consistent drivers.
Yeah, so Ben Keys has put in a real good performance this season, to be fair. Where is he overall in the championship? He was 7th in the championship, so trying to see if there's anyone near him. Quite a decent sized gap between him and Mark Toll, who was running in 8th place. I don't think Toll's with us this evening, so the likelihood of him losing a position is slightly less, but I say running in 7th, to be fair, he's not that far off of like Jan Climbs and Matt York, so possibly might see him lose a position in the overall championship. But well, depending on obviously on how Matt York and Climbs do themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
But looking at the front, Caracas is trying to hang on to that pack of leading cars. So it's BMW, McLaren, and then we've got Marlon in the lone Ferrari. It's such a big go back, isn't it? All the way to 10th place for Rozier. I mean, that's got to be unbelievably painful that happened, and especially because no one else was involved. There was no contact. It was simply a case of trying to carry too much speed. Opening lap, the tyres were a bit cold. I think these, especially those two, Caracas and Rozier, were giving it absolutely everything, and just pushed that a little bit too hard, and possibly lap 1 lost himself the championship.
Yeah, there's a very strong possibility of that, and he is losing a lot of time here. He's significantly faster than Alex, but we said about how I might play into it. That ping of Alex is a little bit concerning from some of these guys' point of view, although jumping up ahead, we've got, I think that's Marlon and Oliar's going side by side, so these guys are fighting a bit in the championship as well. Oliar's trying to hang on to that one around the outside. He's got the inside now going towards Vale. Is he going to get that one done? The inside's going to turn towards the outside. Almost contact on club corner. Zorak's having a sniff around there as well. Does he now get the run onto the Ferrari with a little bit of a slipstream as they head towards Abbey? And we've seen McLaren suffer here already in the likes of Rozier. Zorak that gets through there cleanly, runs a little bit wide on the exit. Can he get it together though to maybe... Oh, as Oliar's under pressure from Marlon. That was a huge send there from Marlon. I'm not sure if he outbraked himself or or what exactly, but that's allowed Zorax to maybe set up a brilliant comeback as they head through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight. They're going to be going side by side towards Brooklands. That's going to allow Alex and Razir to close up in the background, though Razir's under pressure from Meerveld as well. Zorax trying to see if he can make this one stick down the inside of Brooklands. He's going to run Marlon, and that is fantastic driving there, as Alex also having a bit of a think about it as well. Razir did manage to hold on to his position, but brilliant driving there between those guys, and Zorax, a very, very opportunistic bit of driving there from him. He hasn't been able to escape Marlon by any means. Marlon is still definitely hounding him a lot, as this might be an opportunity for Razir. Contact with Razir! Razir goes into the back of Alex. Alex went wide through the first turn, and Razir's dropped even more positions. This is disastrous. And dare I suggest that maybe has something a little bit to do with the ping on Alex's car. You know, Razir's having to push for everything he has right now, and he just got a smidge too close to the back of that car. We're just hopping on board now as they come through Copse Corner. Yeah, there was a slight delay in the contact there, but that was definitely a bit of a misjudgment from Razir. He just wanted to carry that momentum all the way to Maggots and Beckett's, but he just got too close. And the contact model in ACC is renowned for being highly sensitive and just sending cars into the shadow realm, really, when you do make contact between one another. But it's just going from bad to worse for Razir, and after having said about how, generally speaking, he'd had a fairly generally consistent season up until this point, it's just with less than 10 minutes in, it's just going down the drain for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say anything because there is a certain driver that's in the top of the championship that is known for bad luck all throughout last season, so I'm not going to say anything. But is this possibly going to be another case of, as we saw with our second race of the season, Tommy Razir obviously got his 28th position. Is this possibly going to be a resurgence of that bad luck? I mean, it just looked like Alex just didn't quite get the apex at turn 1, and it just completely killed his mid-corner speed in that BMW. And Razir either had the option of really get on the brakes quite a lot to avoid contact, or he was going to have to go incredibly wide over the rumble strips and the curb, and obviously then would risk a drive-through penalty depending on how many track warnings he's already got. And just made the wrong call on that one. This wasn't the room, and he just had such a difference in pace compared to Alex there through turn 1. I don't think he expected to catch that BMW quite as quickly as he did, but as I said, BMW missed the apex and was just sort of way off the pace at that point, even though he's had a great start to the race. So seeing where Alex is now, he's still running, he's still out there with us, which is good, and he's having a little battle with Ben King. So that's the battle for 16th place. They are actually really, really close, and they're having a little bit of a squabble. But good to see those two guys, even though they're further down the grid. Carry on.
Alex going wide at Stowe Corner there, possibly losing that position to Benjamin King now. Oh, that was close, going through the club chicane, but they've managed to make that one work. Jumping ahead though as well, we've got Jan Climbs and a Struch going side by side as they head towards Abbey now. Jan Climbs trying to make it around the outside. That's a difficult move to make in the Porsche. It can be so sketchy on the rear, but he's made that one happen. And Matt York...
There's that Marlon. I just saw Marlon off the track.
Where's Marlon? Marlon is off! Marlon is off!
He's moving again.
Yeah, so he must have lost it, I think. So hop back on the replay, see what happened to Marlon, because he was in a close fight with Zorax and Meerveld. What on earth happened to Marlon? Oh, exactly the same as Razir. And Meerveld, actually. Oh, Meerveld had to take evasive action and actually clipped Marlon as well. On the runoff, Meerveld desperately tried not to make contact with Marlon there, but just could not seem to run wide enough and clipped him as well. So those two guys are going to have a bit of damage. That's allowed Razir to gain a couple of positions out of that, so he'll be very thankful for that. But yeah, it's all definitely kicking off between these guys. Also looking a bit further up, Connor Wright is consistently being put in. Marco Yonkers under a lot of pressure, and this BMW does seem very quick. at certain parts of this circuit. Doesn't quite have the legs on the McLaren to do anything just yet. But you can see in the braking zone, although his actual fact he goes slightly deep there, so maybe not as competitive as the thought there. But yeah, Conor Wright is definitely hounding Yonkers, and those two are in a fight amongst themselves for P3 in the championship. But my goodness, it is all kicking off here, just dropping back as well to Dylan Gosling and Matt York. This fight still raging on in the meantime. Gosling going a little bit deep there as they head through into the club corner. Matt York senses an opportunity. He's going to have a good run here towards Abbey. Is he going to be able to carry the momentum in that Bentley? It's Bentley versus Bentley, but I don't think he's going to quite have it. Does he think about something? Oh, it's very... Oh, almost contact as they head through farm. So you think about a dive he does towards Village. Gosling cuts across a little bit late in the chicane, into Village corner, and is going to hold on for it for now. We saw Zorax make a cutback happen here. Can York do the same? He's going to be firmly locked into the slipstream of that purple Bentley ahead of him as he heads down towards the Wellington Straight. This might be an opportunity for York. He tries to go towards the outside as they head towards Brooklands, who's going to be braver on the brakes. Gosling has got it for now. Has he got it stopped? I think he has. Matt York trying to set up a move as they head through Luffield. Just can't seem to find a gap though. It does look like Dylan Gosling's going to do enough for the time being to hold on to that position. But what a brilliant squabble between those two guys.
And York is going to be really keen to get past Gosling. As we said before, Climbs is running just behind him on track, and they are right next to each other in the championship points. So this is battle to get inside the top 10. I believe Climbs is 10th and York is 11th. Yes, they are. So there's only how many points was between them? There wasn't a great deal either. Oh, my brain doesn't work. Why doesn't my brain work? I can't remember. 217 and 223. So not a massive amount between them. Possibly not enough of a points difference just finishing in front of him. But if he can get a few positions ahead, then possibly York might be able to take 10th place away from Climbs. So they're inside the top 15, so the points are still pretty decent up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that Tommy Rosere...
Quite a gap, hasn't he?
He has actually, yeah. Karekas is sitting quite comfortably in P4 at the moment. There's that ongoing duel between Conor Wright and Yonkers, so Karekas is sort of just biding his time a bit, but the man that's really trying to do something right now is Tommy Rosere, trying to see if he can get a cutback on Terminen. I think he almost darts to the left there, see if he can set up a move onto the Lexus. It looks like he's got a good run as they head through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight. We've seen these guys go side by side towards this corner before. Can Rosere do anything here? I think that damage that he may have got through those bits of contact is compromising him just a bit here as the Lexus goes very, very deep as they head towards Luffield. Does that give Rosere an opportunity? He looks towards getting a cutback through Luffield. That'd be a brilliant move if he can do it, and he has. So that sees Rosere get up into P8 as Meerveld comes in for an extremely early pit stop. So he is probably trying to repair that damage that he got from Marlon when they had their scuffle on the exit of Abbey. But Rosere then, crucial overtakes need to be made right now if he wants a chance of winning this championship still. So he sits in P8. Karekas currently in P4. Oh, sorry, just darting towards the front. Conor Wright trying to go around the outside of Marco Yonkers. That'd be a brilliant move if he can make that one stick. And he's still there, and these guys going side by side as they head towards the club chicane. Down the inside now, has Yonkers got anything against the attack from the BMW? And he has. He's held him off. That was a brilliant resurgence there from Yonkers. Fantastic bit of driving.
Super fair as well. There was didn't appear to be any contact. There was enough space was left, but he was fully committed of, no, I've got the inside line for the second part of the chicane. I'm holding on to it, and he did. And fair play to Wright as well for not coming across and trying to steal away the apex when they were still overlapping. But while that happened, Karekas is now on the back of them. And as much as he's probably thinking he's in a safe place, he can just stay in fourth as long as he just keeps cruising to the end, and as long as Rosere doesn't make too much ground, he has the championship. But if he catches up with the back of Wright and Yonkers and he's close, is he going to risk an overtake? I would imagine, yes, this is Caracas. That's what he does. He will go for the move if it's there. But there's going to be that little voice in the back of his head saying, just finish the race. Just please, just finish the race. You know, because if he makes a mistake and he drops back, he hasn't got much time to recover, and then he loses a place to Rosier, and his championship's gone.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, he's effectively had potentially the championship kind of fall into his lap. There's been such a back and forth with these guys all season, but Rosier has had an absolute disastrous beginning to this race. So Caracas has found himself potentially in a very good position to win this championship, and the last thing that he wants to do, you know, he was purely just kicking himself after last week for throwing away, or for what he considered throwing away, the victory at Zolder. So can you imagine the emotions that he would be having if he was to make contact or drop positions here at Silverstone after potentially being in a position to win the championship? So he will be very mindful of not making any mistakes. And there's something else that we have to consider into this, and unfortunately, you know, we'll have to see how the positions play out today. Obviously, Caracas is looking in a very strong position at the moment to take the championship, but Rosier has got Zorax, Oliars and Steinhauser ahead of him, and although he's not lapping faster than those guys at the moment, you would have to think that if he goes for an undercut strategy and gets that damage repaired, that he might be able to get past those guys. And if he gets himself up into 5th position potentially, if Caracas doesn't make any extra positions up, that would be enough for Rosier to then get the championship. But the only slight question behind it is, will he get any form of penalty for that incident with Alex? You would possibly suggest it was maybe his error despite the connection issues. So if it does go the way of Rosier by the end of today, there'll still be a little bit of ambiguity around that result. But if Caracas finds himself in a championship winning position by the end of this, and assuming that he's got nothing to potentially warrant investigation by the end of it, then that would certainly give us a guaranteed Tier 2 champion. And one thing I just want to quickly note about some of these guys, I've seen a lot of the running very, very wide through Copse Corner, and that's one of the places, alongside places like Stowe, even Maggots and Beckett's is a little bit sensitive to it as well. That's one of the places where you can very easily accumulate these track warnings, and they have got to be so careful. And we've seen Caracas do it before. He got himself a drive-through penalty at Donington, so did Connor Wright, and Tommy Rosier was one of the few that didn't. So, you know, we've still got 40 minutes of racing left to go, so even with the positions like they are at the moment, there are still many factors that could affect how this race ends up playing out.
Yeah, we said about the track limits. I had a really weird one, which I've seen a couple of times now. You can actually pick up 2 track warnings if you go off at Maggots and Beckett's. If you go off on the so if you've got the slight left hander on the entrance and then it goes to a right, if you go deep there and go off, even if you let off the throttle or brake and then rejoin the second long left hander, you can actually get 2 track warnings for that, which I managed to do in a race myself, and I was incredibly annoyed. Because I then, at the second lap of the race, I picked up 2 track warnings, which made the rest of the hour quite difficult. But
sorry to cut you off there. We've got Matt York that's just done another brilliant cutback onto Terminen, and he's already firmly alongside him down the Wellington Straight, so you'd have to think, by the looks of it, he'll be able to make that move stick going into Brooklands if he spots his braking, and he does. So, very nice opportunistic move there from him. But sorry to cut you off there, Tim. Please carry on.
No, absolutely fine. Quick one. Looking at the pace that York has made his way up through the grid, and how quickly he got past Terminen, and when you think of Rosier going past Terminen, Rosier into the pits, and Oligar's in the pits, and who else was that? Did I see?
I think we've got Oliars, Rosier, and Terminen,
yeah.
And Alex as well has just come in as.
He's not showing up on my screen as he's in the pit. Yeah, there he is. Now he's coming in. That's worrying. But I was about to say that I think actually, pace-wise, that Matt York was possibly gaining on Razier, or was going to be able to get himself close enough to possibly cause some problems for Razier. That might be a different story if Razier decides to get all of his damage sorted. But it's still fairly early in the race, 37 minutes left of the race, so obviously some of these guys going for a slightly earlier pit stop. Obviously Razier, you can understand, trying to pit earlier, possibly going to try and play a bit of a numbers game against Caracas and possibly be able to come out in some cleaner air, not having to battle, but he was reasonably on his own, so unless he is sort of was struggling with the damage, he had no real track position reason to pit that much earlier. I'm trying to think where he's going to come out. Well, he's out for the pit now. Where is Caracas? Totally opposite end of the circuit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It looks about half a lap between them.
Yeah, and something that we were just looking at there that's a big concern for Tommy is that Meerveld, who did that very early pit stop, has come out ahead of him. As another pitter, we've got Connor Wright has come into the pits, so he was all over the gearbox of the McLaren of Marco Jonkers, but he's coming into the pits, so has Steinhauser. So we've got a lot of these guys starting to come into the pits now. Zorax as well comes into the pits. Brilliant shots as we see some of the guys come flying on in, and then hard on the brakes. Matt York is in as well. So it'll be interesting to see where some of these guys emerge out of the pits. Benjamin King comes into the pits as well. But yeah, this is very, very, very interesting and critical point of the race, because Razier now, he's got an extra car that he didn't have between him before he ended up doing his pit stop. So Meerveld did that earlier pit stop, repaired his damage, and has been setting some very, very fast lap times. He's just doing high 58.4s on the last laps, and that was 0.6 of a second faster than the likes of Latz. It was half a second faster than Yonkers. So there's a big pace difference on these fresher tyres at the moment, and now for Razier, this is where he has to just give it everything. He's got some sort of form of clear air at the moment, and he'll be starting his first flying laps now. He's going to come out ahead of Matt York. Does he have anybody else ahead of him? That's Zorax. I think that's just come out ahead of Meerveld. Benjamin King got a stop-and-go 30-second penalty. That would be for speeding in the pit lanes. That's very unfortunate for him. But Zorax now has got Meerveld all over his gearbox. Razier will be pleased about this potentially, because this might help bring him back into this fight, and he needs every opportunity he can get right now. Meerveld trying to go around the outside as they head towards Stowe Corner. We saw side by side between Connor Wright and Yonkers earlier through this section. Zorax holding on to that one beautifully. We know Zorax can defend. He did it for ages against Caracas at Donington. Meerveld senses late opportunity though down the inside of the chicane. A little bit of wheel bumping as they head through there, and Razier's going to be looking to try and get involved in this as well. He's got to be careful though not to make any contact with anybody. He's going to now be alongside Meerveld as they head towards Abbey. We've seen Razier lose it here before. He backs out of it for now. Meerveld. Oh, Zorax runs a little bit wide there, and Meerveld's going to get a switchback onto Zorax going down the inside. Does Razier think about getting involved in this? No. He stays back for the time being. Zorax trying desperately to hold on to the outside. He's still got a nose in there. Razier trying to get the cutback on the pair of them if he can, but he's just got nowhere to go, and this is now starting to lose Razier time, which is not what he needs. Razier going to be tucked into this slipstream. We've got 3 McLarens. Surely they don't decide to go 3 wide as they head towards Brooklands curve. Is Razier going to try sending it? No, he doesn't. He backs out that one. Zorax still down the inside. Brilliant racing between all 3 of these guys. Meerveld is going to have to concede that one for now, as Razier trying to carry the momentum around the outside left field. A little bit of contact there with Meerveld on the exit of that corner, and I think Zorax has held on for it for now. Can Razier come back towards Meerveld as they head towards Copse Corner? I don't know if he's going to be able to do anything about that. Not for the time being, but my goodness, what a busy battle between these guys.
Yeah, I don't think that Meerveld could actually see completely forgotten his name. Rozier at that moment in time on the circuit. You think he would have been looking to the apex as he was trying to get on the power. So I imagine kind of just maybe rolled the throttle on. Seeing how these guys get on. I mean, just Benjamin King still hasn't done his drive through. And as a quick look at the background, while these three have been squabbling, especially Zorax and Oliyars.
Oh, Rozier goes
Matt
wide,
York
sorry, at
creeping
Stowe.
into the back of the shot. Oh, yeah, really dropped back off the pace, and that is going to put him within possible.
Oh, contact with
sniffing
Zorax
distance.
and Mirveld. And Rozier goes through, so does York. Mirveld there making a mistake.
Rozier's gone deep, and York's going through. York trying to go to the inside. Amazing run. He gives him space. He doesn't want to cause an issue, but my God, Matt York really respectful there. I would not have, I expected him to maybe lean a little bit harder on the side of Rozier, but he played the sort of the smart game, didn't get involved in an incident, but my goodness, how way things are going for Matt York in this race, instantly gaining some positions, and Caracas, who was our leader, is into the pits, so this might be one to look out for, is when is Caracas going to start moving?
Yeah, keep
This
an
could
eye.
be quite close. I'm on board with Caracas. His car's on the floor and he's rolling now.
So we've got Lats and Connor Wright coming through turn 1 now. So Lats is back through, Connor Wright is through. Where is Caracas? Where's Yonkers? Yonkers is ahead of him as well. So yeah, he's just slotted into where he was before.
Actually, no, is he behind?
Oh, but Connor Wright has got Yonkers. I've just realised Connor Wright has. That's where the swap has happened, because Caracas is still in net P4, but Connor Wright has got ahead of Yonkers during the pit stop. So that's potentially important for the championship for those guys squabbling for P3. But in terms of Caracas's championship hopes, he's effectively just emerged from where he was before the pit stops, but will be on the fresher tyres out of all of these guys.
Yeah, so fingers crossed he can hold it together. Say still, well, just over 30 minutes of the race left. I imagine he'll be hoping that Steinhauser and Oliyars are going to hold themselves up a little bit. Obviously, that's the battle for 5th place. And so that car number 119 of Caracas, he'll be hoping to maybe just keep doing as he did in this first half of the race, try and stay out of trouble and just keep lapping cleanly. Rozier still running in 7th, but Matt York has not dropped away from him, and actually Matt York looking like the aggressor here. So the Bentley obviously going very, very nicely round here. Obviously this is Matt York's first season in the Bentley last year, and historically I believe he's always used the Aston Martin here with Apex Online Racing. But yeah, looking at it, like, York done a really, really good show this time. He's up here battling with championship leaders. And looking at the difference between him and Climbs, so 8th position and 11th position, I think he's going to take 10th position away from him in the championship as well.
Yeah, Matt York is looking very, very feisty, and this is exactly what Tommy does not want. Well, effectively, this entire race has been exactly not what Tommy would have wanted, and he really needs to get his head down now. What does he do? 58.3, only a smidge faster than York on that last lap. And meanwhile, the leaders doing 57s. Interestingly, though, Caracas' last lap, he invalidated it somewhere, because his last lap is still registering as a 2:52, which would have been his pit exit lap. So Caracas has still got to be careful. We don't know where he invalidated the lap, and if you invalidate a lap, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get a track warning. See him, though, flirting with the edges, as they all do actually on the exit Stowe there, so everyone's still very much pushing, but Caracas does really need to be careful, because when you look at the amount of sort of track time between himself and Rozier, well, Rozier at the moment is struggling enough to hold on to P7, but he's got about 9 seconds to Oliyars ahead of him, and then there's Steinhauser ahead of Oliyars, and then it's another 3 seconds up the road to Caracas. So Rozier right now, he's got his sights set on just trying to gain 2 positions without Caracas gaining any positions in the meantime. So really, either Rozier needs to suddenly find a huge amount of pace and really push on in this latter portion of this 60-minute race, or he needs Caracas to get a drive-through penalty, because otherwise I just don't think Rozier is going to have enough.
No. Looking at it at the moment, I would say that... Sorry, my voice went a little wobbly then. I think my internet had a little dip. Yeah, I don't think Rozier is going to have the pace to do it, is he? I mean, it's going to come down, I think, more to, can Caracas maintain what he's got? Steinhauser is a really good racer. He's not going to give up his position easily if Rozier does come up behind him. But at the same time, if Steinhauser catches up with the back of Caracas, he will take the fight to him. We've seen it in previous seasons. We've seen it this season. That he is a really fair but hard racer. Like, you know, he won't just think, oh, it's not my, you know, I'm not in the championship points. If he will go for that overall position, he will take an opportunity if it arises and it can be done safely. So Caracas might need to have a little think about who is behind him. And Oliars as well, another driver that's shown some real good racing this season. And again, he's got nothing to lose by trying to go for a position. So he might as well give it a go. I mean, if he can do that, then he puts himself up at a better chance of staying up in the top near the championship. Whereas now he's third place now. And I think he has a difference of 13 points between him and Connor Wright.
I'm sorry to cut you off there. We've got Meerveld and Climbs going side by side through the club chicane. Climbs desperately trying to hang on to that one around the outside. The Struch is getting involved in this as well, and the Porsche is struggling for straight line speed as they head towards Abbey. Meerveld desperate. Oh, that's very tight, heading through Abbey, and Climbs has lost it, but he just about holds onto the car. Struch is going to sweep around the outside, both of them. Climbs, brilliant car control to just about hold on to that one. That was extremely close there to losing out. The Porsche can be so difficult to recover when you lose it, so a fantastic recovery there from him. But we've seen Rozier fall victim to Abbey already, and the Porsche he got slightly hung out to dry on the marbles there, as Struch having to defend against Meerveld. Meerveld, you'd expect to be the faster of these guys, but I think he's suffering with a little bit of damage after that contact with Zorax, who's a couple of positions up ahead of him, and Meerveld is going to drop behind a Struch in the end. But yeah, that was a great recovery there from Climbs, but unfortunate contact there that took place between the two of them.
Was there actually a touch between those two at that point? I thought it was just the case that trying to carry a bit too much speed in that Porsche and just being off the optimal line, because obviously Van Meerveld was already to the inside. I don't know if I saw contact. You know what? I'm going to have a quick jump back through.
Yeah, double check me on that, because I may have in the excitement misread the situation. In the meantime, whilst you're looking for that, we've got Benjamin King and Dylan Gosling having their own little race at the moment. These two guys have both had stop-and-go 30-second penalties, so they've emerged unsurprisingly. Oh, Gosling gets a huge tank slapper on the exit of Luffield there. The Bentley, as we said before, does sometimes struggle for traction, and no different there. But yeah, these two guys have had stop-and-go 30-second penalties, and you can see that even if you are about, well, effectively 2/3 of a lap behind the leaders, you can still have a nice squabble here in AOR, and the guys in Tier 2, as always, putting on a fantastic show. So, upon review, what was it looking like then for that situation at Abbey?
I will give you a review in just one moment. I'm just using the illegal follow cams, so I can get a really good look. From slow motion helicopter cam, it looked as if there was no contact, just Climbs and Meerveld went a bit too deep, and it doesn't appear to be any contact. He just slightly outdoes himself and drifts wide, and the same with Van Meerveld, and that's why they both lost positions. So as far as I can see, no contact, but you know, whether or not those guys in their games, maybe they did see some contact, but Climbs into the pits, so possibly some damage to his car, maybe completely wrecked his tyres with that slide.
That's a surprising pit stop for him. I'll be interested to see if he does actually emerge out of the pits, because I'm fairly confident that Climbs would have pitted at this point already. I don't believe he was this far off the field, so unless this is a retirement, which would be a shame. But I'm a little bit surprised by that, if that is a typical pit stop to repair the car. Just looking up a bit ahead though, in the meantime, two things are going on that are very, very interesting and may have indirect effects on this championship. One, Korekis over these last few laps has been a few tenths of a second faster than Yonkers, and whilst the gap is still somewhat significant, you know, looking at the rear wing of Yonkers, there's still a good few car lengths there, but with the rate at which Korekis has been gaining, there's the potential that these guys could end up being very close together at the end of the race. So Korekis is still definitely pushing. Yonkers seems to be struggling a little bit by comparison. And the other thing that is interesting as well to keep an eye on is this battle between Steinhauser and Marcin Oliars. Now, not only is Oliars in his own sort of championship battle of trying to desperately hold on for P3, although as it currently stands, I don't think he would be able to do that with Connor Wright currently sitting in second place. I think he'd actually drop down to fifth with Yonkers potentially finishing in third or even fourth as well. But Oliars here has been able to sort of stay in close contact with Steinhauser, but just hasn't quite been able to make a move. But if these two guys do start to battle, then potentially that might allow Rozier to desperately close up, as we see the two cars that we're talking about all the way through the other end of Maggots and Beckett. So you can see it's such... Oh, we've got our first drive-through. Mirveld, our first driver to get a drive-through penalty then. So now, is that a sign of things to come? Is there going to be other drivers that have been dancing around with the track limits just a little bit too much and may fall victim to drive-through penalties for themselves? So that is something to keep an eye on. I said that there's been a few that have been pushing the limits, so we'll have to see if that comes back to bite any of them. But yeah, Rozier is very far away from where he needs to be right now, and he needs, almost at this point, almost heavy battling for a long period of time, or almost an incident between Steinhauser and Oliars in order to put himself back into a championship winning position. So it's certainly not looking good for him at this stage of the race with just under 20 minutes left on the clock.
No, really not looking good. I think something that may have brought about some of those drive-throughs, well, the track warnings for Mirveld, is he's gone off quite a few times with battling. Obviously, we've seen him having a fair few squabbles. Oh, there was a yellow flag. Oh, car number 29. What is that? Mirveld,
that is
he's
Mirveld.
teleporting bits. That was a teleport, I think. I'm sure I saw a yellow dot appear on my screen for a millisecond, sort of around Village, that kind of area, and then he's suddenly in the pit. So that won't even be his drive-through if he's trying to serve that, because it will just be a teleport to pits. So presumably that's him calling it a day for the rest of the day and just going to sit there, I would presume, unless maybe he had some sort of issue. I didn't see anything. I think he just pulled off the circuit. He was going great guns, even with his even though he's further down the grid, he sort of was doing all right. What I was going to say is, I think because he's been squabbling and he's gone off a few times and recovered, that maybe that's where he's been picking up all these drive-throughs. I think that's more where he's picked them up, as opposed to whereas some of the other guys near the front, e.g. Caracas and other people like that, where they haven't been squabbling quite so much, although saying that, car number 3 and 119 getting closer again, Yonkers and Caracas. So I wonder if maybe that drive-through is just because he's gone off a few times, and hopefully these guys that have been pushing really hard at the front, maybe they've kept it a little bit more sort of under control and clean. Oh, here we go. Vermeld actually typing in the Tier 2 chat, so we should find out what is going on with him in a moment, hopefully. So I'm just about able to keep an eye on the old chat as well. Can't see the YouTube chat though. Is anyone watching us? As we are aware that there's new DLC coming out tomorrow, and some of those pesky influencers have got themselves some early content. So if you are watching with us, thank you ever so much for sticking with us. We do massively appreciate it. Oh, and there we go. So Mirveld apologising to Zorax for contact.
Yes, so that was
So
the contact at the club chicane where that was what allowed Razir to get past those two guys when they were having their kind of three-way tussle. So an apology on that front. But any other ideas of maybe why Mirveld retired or chose to retire?
No, nothing as of yet. You know what I can do though? I can just message him directly, and we can see what's happening.
Mid-race interviews, a level of broadcast that we haven't actually, I think, done so far this season. But obviously, because it's sometimes a bit difficult to get hold of the drivers whilst they're in the middle of driving. So and tends to be the case that if you've retired from the race, you're probably not too fond of hanging around too much after your retirement, because that usually means you've had quite a poorly day. But whilst you're trying to find out from Mirveld maybe what happened with him, I have to say Karekas has, over these last few laps, he's been faster than anybody else on the circuit. He's been the only driver to consistently be and remain in the 57s, and I think this is potentially, I said that Karekas made a later pit stop than everybody else, and how tyre wear may factor into this, and Karekas just looks like he is the driver that's got the pace right now. So we'll have to see what he does as he continues, presumably, to close up onto the back of Yonkers. But Dennis Latz has been able to mostly maintain his gap to his Van Wall Simsport teammate of Connor Wright, but Karekas definitely the driver's on the move at the moment. He doesn't particularly need to be, as I'm just looking back briefly to Razir and York, and York again has took a couple of tenths out of Razir there, so Razir just not able to put it together today, and a 58.9 for him, that's almost that's 0.6 of a second slower than what the front runners are putting together. Now admittedly, I think Razir might have a tiny bit of damage off that sort of side-by-side bump that he had with Mirveld as they went through. I think it was on the exit of Club Corner. But I would have. It's sometimes difficult to tell. The ACC contact system can be incredibly overly sensitive at times. So what looks like a small contact can sometimes have very dramatic consequences. But there's not really any sort of visible damage on the side of that McLaren. So I just wonder if this is just lack of pace. Maybe it's lack of spirit as well from Razir, because it's just all gone extremely downhill for him. And Matt York even thinking about a move up the inside towards Stoke Corner, won't be able to do anything just yet. In the meantime, Karekas is absolutely locked onto the gearbox of Marco Yonkers. Does he think about trying to take away P3 from Yonkers? Looks towards the outside, trying to go around the outside maybe. Does he think about a cutback? Maybe setting up a move, as Mirveld has now left the session, so that is his day definitely done. Karekas now does get better drive as they head through Aintree, firmly in the slipstream. It's going to be McLaren versus McLaren again, and Karekas is gaining. These guys have battled before, but Yonkers doesn't look like he's got the same level of pace as Karekas at this point in time. Karekas trying to sweep around the outside as they head towards Brooklands. Can't make that one sit. Yonkers, though, going to go deep. Will have the inside line for Luffield, though. Does he hold it towards the inside? Oh, that was a very, very brave attempt to try holding around the outside there. Oh, this is getting a little bit Hamilton Verstappen-esque right now, as Karekas has got the momentum heading towards Copse Corner. Surely he doesn't gamble and move down towards turn one. He's gonna think about it. Yonkers leaves him space. Karekas, you madman, you got the championship in your hands, and he's still pushing like he needs every single point. But this is the sort of racing competitive spirit that was so used to the pointy end of sim racing. It's the mentality you've got to have sometimes as a racer, to be ruthless, but it can sometimes come back to bite you. That looks quite greasy on the curbs there, and I'm just having flashbacks to Donington where Karekas got that penalty, and I'm fearing that with all this battling and pushing that he could end up jeopardizing his championship winning position, but he is absolutely hounding the back of that McLaren of Yonkers. But Yonkers again showing how brilliant his form has been recently in order to keep Caracas behind for the time being. But a brilliant battle so far between these two.
It was heart and mouth stuff, that, wasn't it? A little bit. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and this is exactly what Razier wants. He wants Caracas to be pushing as hard as he can. He wants Caracas to try and go for positions, because realistically, like we said, the only way he is going to get back in front of Caracas is going to be if there's an incident. And again, super close to Caracas's defense, though. He is being quite careful with his moves. If he's not fully certain that he can get the move done, or at least get alongside Yonkers, he is backing off a little bit. We saw it there just on the exit of, is it Village, I believe, there? Oh, again, they're really close. But he always seems to be just on that knife edge of control. He just seems to know what he's doing. He just places the car nicely, backs out of it just in the right amount of time. As we saw the mistake from Razier earlier, if you don't back out of your move in time, then you're going to get, you collect yourself into the back end of a car. Quick update on Meerveld. Yeah, it was another track limit abuse penalty. He was just frustrated with himself. He said, his words were, "Stupid mistake. Thought I was within track limits." So yeah, he's retired from the race. But fair play. It's one of those things. It's like you said, it's the end of the season. And I mean, he wasn't up there really fighting for championship points. It was merely for pleasure for him. And it can be a bit difficult to keep yourself in a race sometimes if everything's gone wrong. And he was doing quite well earlier, and then obviously it's just sort of problem after problem really for him with those drive-through penalties and a couple of collisions and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Caracas still really on the fight there, isn't he? He really is pushing forward. I'm trying to have a little look-see back from Matt York. Matt York's still right on the back of Razier, isn't he?
Yep, that's what we're looking at the moment.
Of what he wants.
It's the absolute worst case scenario for Razier. It's all Matt York even thinks about sending a late move down the inside of Stowe, and Razier's pace has just fallen off catastrophically in comparison to where we've, known to. Oh, it's a tiny bit of a nudge there in the braking zone. Matt York went a little bit deep under brakes, I have to say. Fantastic. I know that Razier's made mistakes earlier with spatial awareness, but he actually went slightly straight there to compensate, knowing that contact was coming as they head side by side, potentially towards Abbey. Matt York backs out of that one. We've seen Razier lose it here before. Does York think about sending it somewhere as they head towards this corner? He has another little look. Razier not going to fall for that one, but this battling is costing Razier a lot of time. But I think even with the time that it's costing him, he just doesn't look like he's got the pace. He would have needed to really been pushing on with fantastic pace, and I think even without these battles, it just does not look like the car is underneath him today with the same level of confidence we've seen him drive that McLaren before as he goes deep in towards Brooklands, and now that compromises his line through Luffield. We know that the Bentley got squirrely out of here. We saw Gosling have a brilliant drift through there before, but it doesn't look like he can do anything for the time being. Just quickly having a look ahead at Caracas and Yonkers. That gap has more or less stayed the same. And Zorak's also coming under a little bit of pressure from Terminal. Zorak's maybe carrying some damage from earlier, although I think our closest battle on track actually might be Gosling and Benjamin King. Gosling going very wide through Abbey there. These guys have been scrapping for, well, effectively bragging rights. These are the only two drivers so far to have got a stop-and-go 30-second penalty, and they've had a fantastic scrap between them ever since, but it doesn't look like Gosling will be able to do anything in the meantime. We've got so many close and critical battles going on at the moment on the circuits. Again, Razier runs wide on the exit Stowe corner. Zorak still holding on to P9 for the time being. There's just so many battles we're trying to focus on. It's so difficult to keep track of all of them.
Change for third position. Possible change for third. Sorry, I had to quickly come in on yet. Caracas trying to go around the outside. Oh, not quite. Yonkers made a little bit of a mistake earlier on. It clipped the inside curb and bounced himself off of optimal line. But just manages to hold on to the position. But they're absolutely neck and neck. Yonkers going defensive to the inside. A massive move up the outside from Caracas. Can he get it
tiny bit
done?
bump.
I think there was a slight rub. Nothing too major. Probably no damage caused, but definitely pushed him offline. And now Caracas is trying to go up the inside again. But Yonkers will be feeling the pressure now. That is, Caracas really showing that he is not happy to stay in fourth. He wants that final spot on the podium. He wants to get another car between him and Razier. I wonder if Caracas knows that Razier is essentially dropping away from him, though. Does he know about this? Because there is now a humongous track gap now between them. He really does not need to push. 7 minutes, 10 seconds left of the race. He does not need to be pushing this hard. But as far as he's concerned, he's looking and just going, oh, well, he's 7th place. He might not be fully aware of quite how big of a gap he's got to play with.
Yeah, you think he'd have a firm grasp on kind of the point situation between him and Razier at the moment. Quite often when you're in the sort of championship fight, you do have to, or you do tend to think about that sort of relative to your championship rivals, but he'll see in his rearview mirrors that he's got a very comfortable gap to Steinhauser, and he might not fully understand whereabouts on the circuit Razier is relative to that, but he knows that he has a very strong gap to the cars behind him, so you think he'd be aware of that, but he is certainly throwing everything and the kitchen sink at this one to see as again he forces Yonkers to go defensive. We've seen these guys battle through here so many times. That's a very tight line for Yonkers, and that might give the drive. Oh, he parked that one in the middle of the apex beautifully there to stop Caracas getting the drive, but he will be in the slipstream though, and I think Yonkers are going to have to go defensive once more. There was a tiny bit of a bump between these guys on the previous lap as Caracas trying to send it towards the inside. Oh, that's very careful. Guys, it's so close. Little bit of movement between the pair of them, not really knowing what either of their lines were going to be, but Caracas absolutely wringing the neck out of that McLaren and trying desperately, like you say, to get onto the final step of the podium. He doesn't need it. In the meantime, Connor Wright has also been closing in on his teammate in the last few laps, so we potentially may see a change or battle for the lead as well, but this is where it's at. Caracas dancing with the track limits potentially again on the exit of Copse Corner, firmly locked onto the gearbox of Yonkers as they head through Maggotts and Beckett's. Beautiful shots here on the camera of these cars pushing to the limits. You can see how much inside curve Caracas is taking. He is just throwing caution to the wind at this point, and again locked into the slipstream of that blue McLaren ahead of him. I don't think he'll be able to do anything into Stowe Corner, but there was a bit of a difference in line.
Isn't it? It's so close. I mean, fair play to Yonkers for holding on to his nerve, with Caracas sniffing all over the back of him. He's like a overexcited Jack Russell, absolutely going at the back end of this thing and sniffing away. And how he's held his nerve has been absolutely fantastic. I mean, obviously he's looking to trying to get a position above Oliyars, and I think it might be possible. Whereas Oliyars is 6th place, well, maybe not, but it's of the bragging rights of being on the podium amongst some of these big, the big boys. These are the top of the championship here in Tier 2, and just holding him off absolutely fantastically.
Yeah, absolutely, and this just
a different line here. They're quite a bit more split up. Caracas tries to go to the outside again, not able to make the move work. Can he do anything here? He looks like he's going to try and get a switch back, but not able to. Yonkers deciding to go for a more defensive line and covers him off. God, a proper Somerset then, didn't I? Covers him off. Good Lord, what happened there? It's creeping back in.
Yeah, and what's also going on at the front is that this very same battle is basically going on between the Vanwall Simsport teammates. Connor Wright has just been eating away at that lead of Dennis Latz, who's seemingly been in command the entire race, but sort of in these latter stages, his teammate has a close up on the back of him. So we've got battles for first and second and third and fourth with only 3 minutes left to go. So I think this is going to give these guys only 2 more laps of this race. It's quite a long lap around here But we are set for a very exciting showdown as again Karekas tries to find opportunity on Yonkers as they both run a little bit over that white line. On Stowe you can get away with it a little bit, but it's got to be so careful not to overdo it. And then those deadly sausage curves in the club chicane as well. So easy to clip those and bounce your car off those. But Marco Yonkers holding onto that P3 spot for the time being. Oh, as he almost runs wide, almost goes onto the grass at Abbey. Does give a bit of momentum to Karekas again. I don't think Yonkers needed to defend there. That's potentially going to give Karekas some sort of form of opportunity. We've seen him so many times try to set up this cutback onto the Wellington straight. We'll be in the slipstream again.
He's already very close. Is he going to be that little bit close enough where he might be able to make a move? He's going to be forced to the outside again. Goes for under brakes. No, not able to.
Oh, a bit deep from Yonkers though.
Yeah, but I suppose Yonkers not necessarily moving under braking, but he's using a different line nearly every lap, and it's just making Karekas have to double take it. Just think Dennis Latz on his final lap now.
Sorry to cut you off there. We've got Matt York trying to go around the outside of Tommy Razier now, and this could be the nail in the coffin for Razier. Matt York trying to hold on to the outside of that one. He's got the inside for Luff. It'll be a brilliant setup of a move if he can make this one work. He's been trying to get past that McLaren for ages. It's going to be a drag race as they head towards Copse Corner now. McLaren typically has the legs, but he will have to go the long way around. Can York use that drive on the inside of Copse Corner? Can he hold the line? Razier desperately going to try to hold on to the outside, but he can't do it, and York takes that position away. Meanwhile, though, switching back, and Karekas has managed to somehow get a run onto Yonkers on the back straight there, and he is through into P3, but he runs a little bit deep. Can Yonkers come back towards the club chicane? I don't think he's going to be able to. And these battles all taking place at the same sort of time, and unfortunately missing one that we've been following for so long, but Yonkers not able to hold onto that one. In the meantime, we've also got Connor Wright still hounding his Van Wall Simsport teammate at the front for the lead. So I think we've seen 2 resolutions to those battles. Will we have 3 for 3? Will we have a final last-ditch overtake from Connor Wright, who weirdly on the broadcasting tool is showing up in P1? That's not the case. Dennis Latz is definitely in P1 at the moment, but there we go, we've got a correction now. But Connor Wright seeing if he can make a move. He's going to have one final slipstream towards Brooklands. We've seen so many attempts, the pair of them flashing their lights. I think they've been enjoying this battle. Can Dennis Latz hold on to this one? We haven't seen... Oh, he's let Connor Wright through. And I wondered whether or not there would be any sort of form of team orders between these guys for the championship, in terms of Connor Wright trying to take that position for P3, and he's been let through by Dennis Latz. So Dennis Latz gives up his first win attempt to let Connor, I think, convincingly hop into P3, but Grantas Karekas crosses the line in P3 after a fantastic race from him. He kept his cool when Razier did not, and was incredibly aggressive in some of those final laps as well, and he is your Tier 2 champion for Season 9. He was unlucky last season. We said that he was going to be one to watch out for, and he has fought through it all to come back and win the championship. So brilliant stuff from him. Yonkers finishing P4 was unable to hold on to that P3 in the end. Steinhauser fends off Oliars to hold on to 5th, with Oliars crossing home in 6th. I think he will drop down to 5th in the championship. Matt York with that last-ditch overtake does get Tommy Razier at the end, and Tommy, you got a feel for him. Very nice gesture there, flashing the lights to Karekas as Karekas does some donuts. Understandably, very, very happy man there. But Razier, it just all went downhill so early on in the race, and he tried to come back, but was just unable to make up for those rather catastrophic mistakes. You've got to feel for him, though. A valiant effort from him, nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, to stick it out to the end, I mean, I imagine there's quite a few races that everybody knows. If they were in that situation, it would have been a case of, oh, fuck God, they would just throwing their hands up, disconnected and being done with it. So fair play for holding it out and sticking it out, and managing to hold on to 8th place. I think towards the end of the race, that damage to the front end of the car really started to affect the front end grip, the tyres. I think that's why then obviously we saw other guys being able to catch up with them. People like Matt York as well, I think obviously catching up with him. I went back and watched the replay of the Caracas move on Yonkers. Actually, what it turned out to be was going into Maggots. Caracas just was applying the pressure, and Yonkers went a little bit deep and onto the grass. Caracas actually left room for Yonkers to come back on, but then obviously his pace was completely off, and so then Caracas just had the drive. He could just go around the outside and got the move done. So sort of a slightly underwhelming end to it, but absolutely fantastic, and actually really nice to see in the in-game chat that the Brazier is saying a brilliant fight, and congratulating him on first place in the championship. So really good to see such good camaraderie between rivals.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also one of the main staples of the spirit within the AOR community. It's a very friendly community. Obviously, it's a competitive environment. Sometimes the emotions do end up running a bit high, but fundamentally at the end of the day there's a great deal of respect, as there always should be, between people competing in any form of sport, virtual or real, and having great sportsmanship between them, and that's exactly what we've seen here today. And speaking of sportsmanship and camaraderie, Dennis Latz sacrificing that race win on the very final corner to hand over to Connor Wright, almost a little bit Ferrari-esque from the sort of Michael Schumacher dominating era of Formula One with Rubens Barrichello sacrificing a position at the end. Similar things happen between Coulthard and Hakkinen as well, so it's not an unfamiliar sight, but not something we see all too often in the sim racing environment, but that did allow Connor Wright to take that victory. And thinking in terms of points, I don't think Dennis Latz actually needed to do that. I think Connor Wright would have already taken P3 away from Oliars. He finished ahead of Yonkers.
Better safe than sorry, though, isn't it? It's better safe than sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I think between those guys, the Latz will know that he won that race. He will know that he won that race, but on the points table, it just like you say, better to be safe than sorry, and that's allowed his teammate to, in the final race of the season, to jump up to P3 in the championship. So Oliar's unfortunately losing out, I think, to Connor Wright and Yonkers there at the very end. But yeah, a lot of movements of position.
Can you believe it? We've got people wanting interviews.
My goodness.
We've got Connor Wright, our race winner. We've got Caracas, the overall championship, and we've got Matt York as well. So I think if we quickly drag in Connor Wright, as obviously he was our winner this evening, and then we'll get Caracas in, and we'll give him a big cheer as well in 2 seconds. So I'm going to bring Connor Wright into the booth with us as well. Connor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great race for you there, mate. I think Latz may have just given you
I'll
right at the end.
I'm here undeservedly, but I'll take it as a replacement for Hungary. How about that?
That's fair enough.
I mean, it was. No, I didn't want him to do it. I was pushing as hard as I could on that last lap to overtake him, but he knew that obviously he'd changed cars during the season. He'd barely been available to race, so he knew that there was a position up for grabs in the standings for me. So he clearly wanted me to win, but I'd have taken second. I think it was a good race.
Yeah, it looked pretty close between you and Dennis for the majority of that race. He had a little bit of an edge on you by the looks of it, kind of in the opening stint. But I think even with that sort of reversal of the positions, do you think it's fair to say that you had a slight upper hand in the second stint? It just looked like you were reeling him in by sort of a couple of tenths here and there.
We were very even. It was just whoever made a little mistake each lap, sort of it yo-yoed. I think the first stint, obviously, I was stuck behind the McLaren. So I'd like to think that without that happening, I would have been able to keep the gap lower to Dennis, because I think we were battling, and that meant he could get it up to 3 or so seconds in the first stint. So yeah, I think we were pretty even. But then the setups were probably pretty similar. We spent a lot of time together in the car for the endurance race, so that I think that's to be expected, really.
And obviously, we had the endurance race, didn't we, the other day? So I mean, it's a brilliant chance to get a couple of well, a fair few hours under your belt
Yep.
to begin with, wasn't it? So absolutely fantastic. I mean, so I think that does see you in 3rd place overall in the championship. Yet, from what we can tell, don't think you even needed that final position change. To be fair, I think you would have done it anyway, just because Ollie Yars didn't have quite the race he wanted. Obviously, finishing in 6th. But great championship, mate. 3rd place overall. I think absolutely great. I mean, Tommy and Caracas kind of ran away with it a little bit, but they've just had unbelievable consistency all throughout the season.
Start of the season, I just didn't get it together with the setup on the BM when it was a bit new to me, really. But towards the ends, from Donington onwards, I think was where it sort of clicked with me. You know, if Donington had gone the right way as well, that would have been, you know.
So still feeling a little bit sore about Donington, I imagine.
A little bit, yeah. So yeah, I think my season's split into 2 very distinct things. Just the first half, I was getting used to the car because I mean the BM should have been strong at tracks like Brands Hatch and so on, but I just struggled a lot until Donington, and then really got it together with the setup. I'd say a little bit of that came from Van Wall as a team starting to look at the BM and do setups for the endurance race. So we were other people were looking at the car and throwing around ideas, whereas before it was just myself. So it's useful to see other people's ideas, and I'd say that helped quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the team
dream
as
work.
well. Yeah, teamwork does make the dream work. And, you know, speaking of team as well, a very commanding victory in the teams championship for AOR as well. I think
did anyone else even enter a team?
I think there was a couple, but I think if I'm not mistaken, that the Van Wall SimSport I think is registered under sort of 2 teams in the team championship. So I think you've firmly locked out the top 2 spots, and I think there was a couple other people that were looking to try to get their team up there. But yeah, a very strong effort from all of you at Van Wall SimSport, and you know, clearly just sort of there's been highs and lows for each of you guys as a team. Obviously, you've had sort of your highs of your victories, you've had the lows of Donington Park. Dennis has had his obviously today was a very strong performance from him, and probably more representative of the sort of pace that we have seen every now and again from Dennis, but you know, suffering from disconnects at points in the season as well. So you've each had your sort of your peaks and your lows, but overall definitely a strong season put together by each of you. And do you think that, you know, sort of, do you think that all of you guys from Van Wall, do you think going to carry that momentum into next season? Will we be seeing you for season 10?
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, yeah, we've all been in AOR ACC since season 1, I think, so no reason to stop now. I'd like to hope that Andy Vanders will join us again. He stepped away from this season. I think he got a new rig right near the start, so wanted to get used to that before doing any league racing, etc. So hopefully he'll join us again next season, and we can have more of us on the grid.
Fantastic. Yeah, so strong team, strong finish overall in the championship for yourself. I mean, fantastic effort, and we look forward to seeing you guys in season 10. I am going to have to call it there, as we've got Gratis Caracas patiently waiting as well. So thank you ever so much for joining us,
Thanks
Connor.
for streaming, guys. You know, it's
no worries.
You don't have to do it, so it's nice that you do. So thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for hopping in the comms box for a couple of occasions as well. It's always nice to talk to people post-race. But yeah, brilliant season. Congrats on P3 and Championship, Connor.
Grantis Caracas, can you hear us?
Yep, absolutely.
Amazing season, mate. Absolutely fantastic race from you this evening as well. Super consistent. You can put all the bad luck from season 8 behind you now. It is a distant memory that we will forget. We will lock it away, because season 9 has been your season. Brilliant effort this season, mate.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, it was a interesting season. Yeah, it was quite fun. Of course, there was some bad luck for me this season. I think I could have finished way better. First 3 races for me were actually really good. It was quite up. And then, yeah, next 2 races quite bad luck, and I have to do some catch up at the last races. And yeah, final race was actually really good for me, and yeah, feel happy.
I say it was an amazing. We've seen some amazing performances from you. I mean, obviously it was a second, a third, and a first in the first 3 races. Then that bit of bad luck you were saying about an 8th and a 9th place, but then a third, a second, and then obviously third overall this evening as well, which clinched the championship for you. Obviously, maybe you would have liked it to be a little bit of a closer battle with Tommy towards the end, but obviously he had his own issues and ended up going deep and going off. So I don't want to say it got gifted to you at the end because it was still a massive effort. But was there a little bit of a breath of relief when you saw Tommy a bit further down the grid and you knew it wasn't going to come down to track position?
Yeah, absolutely. After saw when he spun, and I saw he was like P11, P12 or something. So yeah, obviously it was a little breath for me, but as well I knew if he's gonna finish like P5, he's gonna come back to P5, and I will be P4. He will win the championship by 1 point, so I have to get that podium. But yeah, thankfully he didn't finish P8, and he didn't finish P5, sorry, and yeah, and I somehow got that podium at the end.
Yeah, and speaking of that podium, that was a pretty nail-biting battle for us to watch. And you know, we were wondering, kind of, given the position that you're in, given sort of that, you know, Tommy hadn't been able to make that comeback through the field at that late stage in the race, we were wondering, kind of, were you sort of just going to hold back a bit, just maintain position? But you absolutely gave it everything to steal that P3 position away from Marco at the end there. So I mean, it was fantastic for us to watch. But you know, sort of in the back of your mind, were there moments where you were wondering, is this worth it, or was it just out and out commitment, you know, racing driver mentality, and just going for every position you could get?
Yeah, well, obviously there was a risk. I was trying to do it very cleanly. It wasn't really doing stupid moves, because if I would do stupid move, like take him out or something and get like a penalty and I would lose the championships. So obviously I wasn't taking like very aggressively, but obviously I really wanted that podium. Be the best McLaren today, and yeah, really happy what they achieved today.
So you left it to the very last lap to get it done, and so it looked like you were just applying enough pressure that just unsettled Yonkers towards the end. And say it even looked like you actually it looked like you braked to let Yonkers back on. You gave him lots and lots of room. I say lots of other people would have tried to maybe just keep it flat and avoid, you know, and possibly get into an incident, but you gave him plenty of space and actually got the move done after the corner complex. So great sportsmanship as well throughout the entire race. Like you said, kept it really clean, stayed out of trouble, and showed absolutely blistering pace all season long. So it's I would give you a round of applause if it wouldn't sound horrific if I clap in my understairs cupboard. But it's been a great race for you. So we've been cheering you on since season 8 when you had some bad luck. So it's really great to see you doing really, really well this season. We're already pleased here in Tier 2.
Yep, thank you guys.
Yeah, congratulations then. And I was just saying, do you think that you'll be joining AOR again for Season 10?
Yeah, of course. If I have time, definitely I would love to join back, and hopefully in Tier 1 this time.
Fingers crossed. That'd be certainly a good follow-up for you, wouldn't it? But yeah, final congratulations then from us on that brilliant season from you, Grantis, and yeah, we look forward to seeing you back in AOR again. So brilliant stuff. Well done.
Thank you for organizing and commentating the event. Cheers.
Always a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
See you soon.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Grantis.
So I think we have one last man waiting for an interview, and that is Yorkie. So we'll drag him in.
Been waiting very patiently.
He has waited very, very patiently. I don't think he can hear us at the moment. Yorkie!
No, I can hear you. I'm here.
Hey!
Hello.
That was a bit of an exciting one for you towards the end. Say, catching up with well, at the beginning of this race, he was the championship leader, but then ended up coming second overall in the championship. And I believe with your position, getting past Climbs, I believe that puts you in the top 10 of the championship.
Yeah, I think, depending on how many points Terramonin actually scored, I may have actually grabbed 8th. If not, it's going to be 9th position in the championship. I worked out that just about managed to jump Mark Toll by 1 point. So
Oh, fantastic! I mean, your math is probably far superior to mine. I've sort of been trying to do it whilst everything's been going on, and kind of lots of fingers and thumbs in my little understairs cupboard trying to work it out. But it was a really good race. You had some absolutely fantastic pace out there this evening, especially with that second half of the race. The car just seemed to come alive. You really starting to sort of bond with the Bentley? Think you're going to stick with it for next season?
Oh, I don't know if I'm going to stay with it for next season. I might do. It'd be nice to keep going with it and kind of get on top of it a little bit more and try out some stuff, a few other things. But yeah, kind of got a handle on the Bentley. The car, to be honest, wasn't 100% where I wanted it for this race. It was good and quick, but I think the bop hurts it, and also the setup was a little bit loose in some of the entry to some of the high-speed corners, Maggots, Beckett's, and going into Abbey. The car could quite easily break away, so I was having to be a little bit more cautious in those areas than I probably would like, to make sure that the car wouldn't step out on me. But yeah, managed to look after the tyres. I think in the latter half of both the two stints, certainly had the pace over some of the other guys, had some good battles, and yeah, made quite a nice recovery after having a slight contact with Terramonen up at Stowe on lap 1. Dropped me down a bunch of positions, but managed to work my way up, and then yeah, had some awesome battles, and hopefully you guys called it a very nice move around the outside into Brooklands.
Sure, we
And the
call
battle
it.
all the way.
I'm fairly
pretty
confident
sure
we
we call
did.
that one.
Yeah, we were looking quite intensely at that battle, because it was a very unfavourable situation for Tommy to be in, but it wasn't particularly championship deciding at that point. I think the way that I described it in the moment was it was the nail in the coffin for him at that point in time. But yeah, it was a fantastic move, and we could see it just seemed that you did have that edge in the long term, like saying, sort of in the latter portions of those stints, to really be able to take the fight to Tommy in the McLaren, which stereotypically around Silverstone would kind of be the car to beat. We saw that the M4s really came alive over sort of the last couple of days for Silverstone here as well, but you know, in the Bentley, it was a definitely a sort of a brilliant bit of racecraft and consistency from you to be able to make that move in the end. And you know, obviously we've kind of talked about that you've had some highs and some lows of this season where things have sort of maybe haven't quite gelled with the car so much. You've had some bad luck sometimes with incidents with just being caught up with mid-pack shenanigans, as is quite typically the case sometimes in league racing. But you know, so what do you think like your highlight of this season has been for you?
Oh, I don't know. This race was certainly one of them. That was very good. Nürburgring was also a ton of fun. I was praying for rain in that race, and the rain never came. It was 100% dry all the way through. But the car just worked really well there. And although it wasn't an amazing result, I think it was 18th in the end. I started P23. That was just awesome battling with the cars around me. So that made it a hell of a lot of fun. So yeah, probably those moments. I think I need to work on my qualifying, and I also need to work on my pace early on in this season. It's probably been like the third or fourth season running where I've started off not so great, kind of finishing in and around the high 20s, and then as the season progresses, start getting more towards the top 10. I don't know whether that's because I'm getting better and more comfortable, or it's well, certainly for this season, I think the drop off in players has kind of aided there, because a lot of the guys are insanely quick and pretty much tier 1 material.
Yeah, I think not just within AOR. I think there's obviously, with everything going on, sort of especially across Europe at the moment, there's been a large amount of drop-offs, especially this season, which has been a bit of a shame, but obviously completely understandable. Obviously, as we can probably tell, you're a UK man, so we're all pretty normal lives here. But obviously, going on across all over the world, it's a little bit confusing for some people, and obviously priorities in real life sometimes take advantage. But that is the way it is. But I've got you obviously mentioned that you weren't going to possibly use the Bentley. are we looking at possibly using one of the new cars next season? As I think, like at midnight / tomorrow, there's more DLC coming out, and obviously there's the reasonably new BMW that's still pretty fresh. So, are we thinking a new car or going back to an old favourite?
I don't know. Front engine really suits me. I struggle with mid-engined cars, although I haven't really given the McLaren and the Ferrari a fair shot. So maybe they can go on the list. But otherwise, I'm kind of eyeing up either the Bentley again, or I might go the M4. I'm probably not going to go for the new Audi. I tried the Audi the very first season, or the older Audi, shall I say, in the very first season that I did here with AOR, and I ended up switching to the Merc AMG halfway through, just because I was struggling so much. So yeah, I don't know. We shall see. We shall see.
We'll have to keep a little eye out, and we see if we can pre-season. We might be able to work out what you're using possibly. But thank you ever so much for joining us this evening in the commentary box. Obviously, always a pleasure chatting with you. I think we're probably going to call it a day at this point, as it's getting pretty late into the night. But say, fantastic effort. Obviously, the standings aren't updated yet, so can't see exactly where you finished. But as you said, you reckon somewhere around the 8th or 9th position, depending on what Termanen scored. So fingers crossed on that one. A really good effort inside the top 10 tier 2. That's that is nothing to be sniffed at. That is round of applause, big time. And also you're taking part in the endurance season, aren't you?
Yeah, so we've got that race Saturday, 8 hours of Monza, which will be interesting. But yeah, hopefully P8, maybe P9, we shall see. Hopefully they'll update very, very soon. But just also want to say massive thanks to you guys as well for I almost said subscribe to the channel. Very much a natural phrase there. No, thank you very much for commentating on the season and providing the coverage. You guys have been doing an awesome job, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of catch back up the following day, watching the races back through and kind of seeing the action unfolding elsewhere on the circuit. So yeah, cheers for that. You guys have done a fantastic job.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's very kind of you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cool. Cheers, mate. And we shall see you next season, hopefully.
Yep. You guys take care.
Yeah,
see you soon.
cheers. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Just before we go, got to quickly say, obviously a couple of people have obviously said, thank you very much to what we've been doing. I want to put a massive shout out there. John has completely saved the tier 2 streams this season, as I have had nothing but technical difficulties, eyes falling apart, and then no internet. So massive shout out to John for last minute, pretty much every week being able to stream and do everything from, I believe, as a single monitor in his uni accommodation. So just a massive shout out to him for saving the day, as at the last minute you've come in multiple times. So 100%, if you want to send any love, send it to John, as it's been a season to forget for me in the commentary box.
Oh, you're very kind, Tim, and thank you for the kind words. But no, it's also been a pleasure commentating with you for the first time this season as well on the majority of races. Unfortunately, we have had a couple of moments where it's been a little bit sad solo comments in the box, but no, it's been a fantastic season to commentate on, and it's always a pleasure to commentate on AOR as always. But yeah, we will look to sort of start wrapping up there. But just as a quick sort of final comment, as alluded to in the conversation with Matt York there in that final interview, whilst the Sprint Series is coming to an end, the AOR Endurance Series is still going on, and that will be taking place this weekend around Monza, as we already mentioned. So if you want to see some much longer, maybe a bit more patient racing, and but nonetheless equally exciting, then do join us for that over the weekend. It's going to be some exciting broadcasts there, undoubtedly. And if you are interested in getting involved in league racing and in AOR, then do head over to apexonline.racing. There will be a Season 10 undoubtedly for this championship, and it would be brilliant to once again see growing numbers within the AOR ACC community and expand into even more tiers. Like I say, I think, as you said earlier, Tim, we're up to 10 now. Maybe we'll start getting even higher up, and I'm sure that we might see a bit more of an intake with the extra interest of some of these new car releases as well. And I think between seasons, it's not uncommon for AOR to host some fun events with the new content, so stay on the lookout for that as well. So there may be some extra fun races to get involved in. But for this season then, that is going to be it there. It's been a fantastic championship here in Tier 2, where often we've seen racing that has been sometimes better than Tier 1, I would say, in terms of the sort of the racecraft, the consistency and the respect between drivers. It's been fantastic to watch, and Grantis Karekas coming back from a slightly disappointing Season 8 result for him to go on to win this championship for Season 9, so a stellar effort from him, with Tommy Rozier in second, and then Connor Wright snatching that P3 position at the end. And also congratulations to, albeit a dominant victory, but a well-earned one nonetheless, to Vanwall Simsport, all the guys from then to take the teams championship. Maybe next season we'll get a few more people registering their teams in to give them a little bit more of a headache at taking that one. But it's been a fantastic season. Like I said, it's been fantastic commentating with you, Tim, all season as well. So any final words from you? Tim, are you there?
Right, my internet dropped out a little bit then, so I just was waiting for it to try and come back up.
The irony.
I think that's it. I'm going to end it there. As we said, with terrible internet, slowly killing me from the inside. so I'll be in a new house hopefully by next season. So hopefully the internet will be slightly better. But yeah, thank you for everyone that's joined us, either watching it live or watching back at any point. Anyone that's ever been involved in the chat, massive thank you to everyone. As it's something we enjoy doing, and I'm awful at racing, but I can talk for hours, so that's always a bonus. So I think that's all I can say. Just say thank you ever so much for joining me this season, mate. It's been an absolute godsend.
Yeah, and it's been a pleasure from my side too. And nice to see that we're ending the season just how we started, with nothing but technical difficulties. I think that's a fitting way to end Season 9. But yeah, thank you so much everybody for watching today and throughout the rest of the season. We will hopefully see all of you again very soon for more exciting championships here at AOR. But for now, it's goodbye.